You're watching live from New Delhi. This is DD India, India's voice to the world. I'm Sakal Bhatt, and coming up in the next 30 minutes, the top story. Foggy conditions hamper rescue team efforts at Iran helicopter crash site. Iran state television stops all its regular programming to show prayers for President Ebrahim Raisi. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi prays for well-being of the Iranian president, says we stand in solidarity with the Iranian people in this hour of distress. White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan meets Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And ahead of the fifth phase of polling slated on Monday, all arrangements in place for 49 parliamentary constituencies spread over 6 states and 2 union territories. A helicopter carrying Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi and his foreign minister has crashed on Sunday reportedly as it was crossing mountain terrain in heavy fog. An Iranian official told news agency Reuters, and rescuers were also making their way to the site of the incident. The official said the lives of Raisi and foreign minister Hossein Amiruddin were at risk following the helicopter crash, which happened on the way back from a visit to Iran's border with Azerbaijan. The bad weather was complicating rescue efforts, the state news agency IRNA reported. The Chief of Staff of Iran's army has ordered all the resources of the army and the elite Revolutionary Guard to be put to use in the search and rescue operations. Earlier, the state news agency IRNA reported that the bad weather was complicating rescue efforts. The semi-official Fars news agency also has urged Iranians to pray for Raisi, and state TV carried prayers for their safety. The state news agency IRNA says the helicopter in question had been carrying the president himself, Raisi, foreign minister, and the local officials. As well as what we do know is that the interior minister Ahmed Wahidi told the state TV only that one of the helicopters in a group of 3 had come down hard, and the authorities were awaiting for the further details.
On the return journey, the president and others accompanying him were coming back in several helicopters. One of the helicopters was forced to make a rough landing due to bad weather conditions and fog in the area. Now various rescue teams are moving in a different direction of the area.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has expressed deep concerns over the reports of Iranian president's helicopter flight taking to the platform X. Prime Minister Modi said that deeply concerned by reports regarding President Raisi's helicopter flight today. We stand in full solidarity with the Iranian people in this hour of distress and pray for well-being of the president and his entourage. Meanwhile, rescue efforts are underway for Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi and Foreign Minister. 40 immediate rescue teams have been deployed, while drone and sky tools have also been used in these efforts.
40 immediate response teams are searching the region now. A region called Chakwak is being searched more because of the signs we got from that region. But the weather conditions are very bad and the accessibility of the location is also very difficult. Dear colleagues are doing their best. We have used drone and sky tools, but considering the weather conditions, it is not possible to do air search. It is only possible through ground forces.
Azeri President, or the Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev, has said on Sunday that he was profoundly troubled by the news of the Iranian president's helicopter crash landing after bidding a friendly farewell to Ebrahim Raisi earlier in the day. Aliyev said today, and I quote, Today, after bidding a friendly farewell to the President of Islamic Republic of Iran, Ebrahim Raisi, we were profoundly troubled by the news of the helicopter carrying the top delegation crash landing in Iran, unquote. And earlier, before the crash, Iran's President Ebrahim Raisi inaugurated a joint dam project with Azerbaijan on the shared border, the visuals of which are right on your screens. The helicopter carrying Raisi and his foreign minister crashed as it was crossing mountain terrain in heavy fog on the way back from a visit to the border with Azerbaijan. My colleague Stuart Smith joins us from Baghdad for more inputs that he's picking up on this very disturbing news, Stuart. But we do know that Iraq has offered to help. What more are you picking up on the development?
That's right. Here in Baghdad, the Prime Minister has told neighbouring Iran that it is able to offer anything the Interior Ministry here can provide, as well as help from the Red Crescent, to help in this search and rescue operation in Iran. But so far, it seems the shortage isn't in equipment. It's really the weather conditions in Iran that are severely hampering this search, as well as aircraft being grounded, as well as drones impossible to fly in the thick fog, rain and winds, and now darkness. Even vehicles reportedly from rescuers, they say, cannot get to the suspected location of the crash site. The roads are unpaved and impassable by vehicle, meaning it's just sniffer dogs and men on foot on the ground trying to reach the suspected location. There was a last ping from a GPS signal. That's where the rescuers are heading to. And over the last hour, we've heard repeated mentions that rescuers are getting closer and closer to that site. But no one official has yet said that rescuers have reached that suspected site, and therefore we still don't know whether the President of Iran, the Foreign Minister and those two regional officials are okay, and nor do we know the status of the helicopter they were travelling in when trying to return from that state visit to from northern Iran to elsewhere in northwest Iran.
Do we have more reactions coming in from neighbouring Iraq on this disturbing news besides offering help?
Yeah, offering help, but also condolences, which seems to be the theme of the region. They've come in from Afghanistan, Pakistan, Azerbaijan, the US and European Union too. None of these countries speculating as to what's happened, but focusing on the huge risk. They say that something very bad has happened when this helicopter came down. The lack of information, though, is fueling rumours, as you perhaps can imagine. And Iranian state television, as well as officials in Iran, are keen to stress that they have not said anything more than the rescuers are approaching the site. There is no confirmation from any official source about whether the president is alive or dead. The Iranian supreme leader, the one person more senior than the Iranian president, has offered his thoughts and prayers and says as long as the country does not worry, then Iran will be able to continue. He's asking people to pray for the health of the president and his entourage.
In fact, the Iranian supreme leader Ayatollah Khomeini has said, and I quote, that no disruption in work of the country should take place, quote unquote, following this disturbing piece of news. Thank you very much, meanwhile, Stuart Smith, for joining us live from Baghdad on this developing story. Meanwhile, Iran state television stopped all its regular programming to show prayers being held across for the country for President Ebrahim Raisi after his helicopter crashed. And let's quickly, go across to my colleague Amritpal Singh, who has been tracking this story since we broke it on DD India. Amrit, over to you. Any additional information that we are picking up? Because now it seems that the visuals, the state television has stopped all its programming. There are visuals of the citizens of Iran. They're praying, and maybe it is just a matter of time when we get to hear a confirmed piece of news, disturbing news.
Things point to that direction, Sakal. The Iranian armed forces have been deployed for rescue operations. Earlier, it was the rescue operators from the region and the province of East Azerbaijan, which is a province of Iran. But now the armed forces have been stepped in. That speaks about the severity of the situation, and also the very fact that close to about 5.5 hours have passed, and they haven't been able to establish contact with a helicopter, given the terrain, which dense forest there, It's a mountainous region and the weather is really bad. It's constantly raining. There is fog. Visibility is poor. Forget about, air vehicles. Even the land vehicles like cars and trucks are not able to go. As Stuart was saying, mainly it's a remote area, so the roads are unpaved. So because of that, the terrain and the weather is posing its own set of challenges. So, but the very fact that prayers are being held for President Ebrahim Raisi and the Supreme Commanders, the Supreme Leaders' statement that they should pray for it, and the nation will go on, does point towards that something really ominous has happened, though it is not confirmed. Nobody is saying it on record, but sources-based information where sources, official sources even, are saying that lives are at risk.
Okay.
So when they say that, that clearly points towards the president and the foreign minister.
Okay, Amritpal, keep tracking more information for us. Meanwhile, many thanks for joining us on this broadcast, Amrit. Thank you. Let me quickly go across to Jessica Taneja joining us live from National Capital, New Delhi. And I also welcome, yes, Jessica is there, Atul Aneja, editor, Indian Narrative and expert in foreign affairs. He's reported verily in conflicts from Baghdad, Beirut, Cairo, Benghazi, Kabul, Tehran also. Thank you very much, Mr. Aneja. Now, what do you make of this?
And elsewhere hit Israel, and you
Mr. Aneja, can you hear us?
Your comments going on, and we have rescuers.
Is the addition that we just assist, since they are familiar with
Weather condition, rescue and search up.
Helicopter, and there's also rain. The public and the military.
Mr. Aneja, can you hear us from Delhi studio, please? Can we, meanwhile, can we go across to Jessica? Jessica. Okay, Jessica, any additional information that you can share with our viewers apart from what Amrit shared with us? President Joe Biden has also been briefed about the latest development, and I believe Jessica Taneja and Atul Aneja are joining us on this broadcast. Mr. Aneja, can you hear us?
Yes, very well. Sakal.
Okay, apologies for that initial glitch. Now, it's the term crash is being used now. Earlier, they spoke about the hard landing and then incident and now crash. And state television is splashing these visuals of people coming out and praying in large numbers. The Supreme Leader says no disruption in work of the country. And more than 40 rescue teams by the army have been pumped into action as far as rescue ops are concerned. Give us an insight as to what could have happened.
Sakal, difficult to predict, but if you sum up all the related developments that are taking place, it's not looking good. Obviously, the term that from hard landing to crash itself it goes a level up towards that something more ominous may have happened, and Supreme Leader stepping in to asking generally for calm. Seems to be in a way trying to prepare the population of highly emotive people right now, I'm sure, in the streets of Tehran and other places, to retain calm, and whatever happens, that the state has to be in control. So it's not looking good, and these are all ominous signs. But miracles have happened, Sakal. So till the time we actually have a confirmation of actually what's happened, I think we should just stop at that. But as I said, it's not looking good.
Okay, Jessica, if you could hear me. Okay, we'll try and go back to Jessica in a bit, but meanwhile, interior ministers there have confirmed the helicopter incident, Mr. Aneja, and you have yourself reported in the conflict zone way back in Tehran. Politically speaking, though the Supreme Leader says that the show must go on, he says no disruption in work of the country, quote unquote. But in a situation where we get to hear, God forbid, some bad news coming in, what happens next?
Well, there are two, three things, Sakal. One is, of course, the domestic side. This is taking place in a certain context. There's already a conflict which is going on in the region, and Iran is at the heart of it. If you recall, Iran had fired missiles into Israeli territory not too long ago, and the entire region is at edge. And at the heart of it is Iran and Iran network of other organizations like Hezbollah. So it's likely to go beyond the repercussions of what's going to happen. But obviously the state wants to control it, and the real power, Sakal, and this is important, is not with the president of Iran, but with the supreme leader, which is Ayatollah Khamenei.
I'll just interrupt you here for 30 seconds because my colleague Jessica, who has been tracking some more developments. Jessica, coming to you. Unfortunately, we were not able to establish audio contact with you earlier. Now that you're here with us, Jessica, fill in with more information. What more are you picking up?
Well, the latest information has been shared with you, Sakal, so far that, the word hard landing has been replaced with crash, and that perhaps explains the significance of what is happening right now in Iran. And the various news readouts that we're getting from the Iranian agencies, one of them in particular, if I can read out, has also been pointing out that it has come from, in fact, the Iranian agency and the spokesperson who says that the location of the helicopter, the site, has not yet been determined. The rescue operations are still on, and it's still a very tricky terrain, as Amritpal was also pointing out. So the situation remains tense, but what is the significance of this moving forward? Because it hadn't been anticipated on how things would go. The uncertainty now prevails. Of course, there are certain structures which will now start operating in order to sort of maintain that status quo of stability in Iran. Because as we know, he was considered second in command to Ayatollah Khomeini, the supreme leader. And if it's not a bit of a stretch to also say, as many analysts believe, that he was to take charge in case the current supreme leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, would not survive the illnesses that he has been currently stricken with and has been for the last few years as well. So given the kind of prestige and the political prominence he did gain, but also it's important to point out that the significance is limited because the policies in Iran are not made at the presidential complex. They are dictated by the supreme leader, and he is one of the most powerful leaders, and secondary would of course be the IRGC. Although he has been a hardliner, a cleric for the past, a very trusted personal sort of advisor to Ayatollah Khomeini, and in fact, some even say his contest is as close to being a successor for what Ayatollah Khomeini wants his son to be, and his position remains as strong as that. So, of course, that significance is there, but policy-wise, nothing significantly changes, just that he leaves a checkered legacy behind him, if in case there is anything reported otherwise.
Yes. Jessica, just stay with us. In fact, you were talking about the Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khomeini. He has actually prayed for the safe return of Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi. In a social media post, we can flash that post on your screens. Khomeini has written, and I quote, "We hope Almighty God will return the respected, esteemed President and his entourage to the arms of the nation," quote unquote. Jessica, you may continue. So you're saying that nothing much will change, but what more information are you picking up as far as this entourage which was accompanying the president himself is concerned?
Well, there was another official from Azerbaijan who was part of his entourage. You already know the foreign minister was part of it as well. And his entire journey to Azerbaijan was to launch that port project, that crucial port project between Iran and Azerbaijan. And of course, that didn't go according to plan. Right now, the focus remains on what has happened to that particular helicopter. What was the advisory given to the president, knowing that the weather conditions were not appropriate for his travel? And since, Sakal, it's important to point out, since the Iranian ministry controls information to the T, it's very difficult to ascertain as to what is coming out of Iran and difficult to sort of balance that information at this point, because there is very limited information that is percolating through news agencies like IRNA, etc., which have been able to give information to other agencies who are able to provide that. But the situation still remains grim, and the latest updates are exactly the same as they were. The weather conditions remain turbulent, and the helicopter crash site has still not been located, despite the rescue efforts and despite additional effort that has been put in by the entire force in Iran.
But what do you make of the state television splashing, Jessica, those visuals of people coming out and praying? And in fact, they have stopped all the soft otherwise programming on news, and they are just sticking to this. So is this a situation where you're buying more time and you're preparing your nation for the worst ever news to come? Let's hope that it doesn't. But how do you put this? How do you join the dots?
Well, if you look at the agency reports, as I have scanned a couple of them on Twitter, or X, formerly known as Twitter, it does seem to suggest at this point that there is some formal level of preparation as to what this entire situation might lead to. But then again, caution intended that information that is coming out is very limited and mostly unverified at this point. Very few reliable agencies are able to put out that information, and the mood of the nation, as we all know, would be grim, and especially the political circles, because because the supreme leader considered Ebrahim Raisi as his second in command, and certainly someone in the upper echelons that he would not want to be gone, since he is not keeping well. Reports of his cancer treatment had emerged many years ago, and those are still unverified, but it is certain that Ayatollah Khomeini has not been well. And Ebrahim Raisi, being with him since the 1980s, has been able to sort of cement his position as the supreme commander of the country. And let's also not forget that Ebrahim Raisi's loss would sort of create a divide in Iran as well. And if you recall, in 2021, when he was elected president, the turnout in Iran was the lowest since 1979. It was just a mere 41%. So that was certainly the mood of the nation as to how his election was certainly propped, as many Iranians on the other side believed, and opposition still hit the streets. So you could also expect protests if there is also a peaceful sort of idea about praying for his well-being, or still hoping that he's alive. But there is another section of the Iranian people who were not very happy with him and would not certainly be very hopeful of this situation coming out positively for him.
Okay, all right, Jessica. Many thanks for those inputs, and thank you very much for joining us. We'll of course come to you later in the next broadcast. Taking a cue from what Jessica said, Mr. Aneja, coming to you. So in a situation, what happens if a president is incapacitated? We do hope that Iran doesn't have to say this, Iran doesn't have to see such news, bad news, but then since you have yourself reported in the conflicts in Tehran and you understand their constitution well.
Sakal, the first thing which happens is the vice president takes over, just in case there's an eventuality of the president for some reason not being there. And the next step would be holding elections for the presidency, which have to be done within 54 days, if I recall. The fresh elections and the election of a new president. Now that's a procedural part which takes place. But given the peculiar system which prevails in Iran, I mean, there is no problem in terms of exercise of authority. We're already seeing Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader, stepping in and asking for calm. So systems already kicked in into such an eventuality. So that's number one. Number two is because emotions are running high, how does it really happen in Iran? I don't see any, there is a reservoir of anger or whatever, emotional outburst, but it is directed in a way, the way the state wants. You have some organization called the Basij, which are paramilitary forces, which are there across the country. It's a huge organization. It's something like a party organization, and these are these paramilitary forces which will control the narrative, depending on how the supreme leader and his top advisors, specifically the supreme leader, wants the script to be. So the options are all there within the Iranian system as to how to play it out, just in case we fear the worst eventuality. Now the third element, I'll just quickly finish this
please
point.
Go ahead, sir. Yes.
The third element will be, we're going a little far, but once they find the black boxes, an investigation takes place. That's where it really counts as to what was the cause of this.
Could it be the health of the fleet? Could it be?
It could be anything.
Yeah.
It could be anything. But that would be a decisive kind of a input which will go into the response from Iran. It could be if it's a mechanical failure or some technical flaw, I think then the matter winds up there itself. But suppose it's something else, it comes out of that, then it feeds into a very different kind of narrative and gets regional. So there are various ways, but I don't want to jump the gun. It all depends then on the investigation which takes place and the way the supreme leader and the rulers of Iran want it to be played. They may actually find something but not want to play it to the extent that it leads to a major flare up again in the region.
Okay.
Already
there could be. Are you saying that there could be a spillover on the streets of Tehran?
It could be Tehran, Isfahan, and Tabriz, and all the major cities but how will you direct and channelize that anger on the streets is something which can be controlled in Iran. And I've seen it in 2009 during what was supposed to be flawed elections, and there was outpouring in the streets. But that's where the Basijis came in, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps, which is the core of the state, really, of the elite within the military, and how within a matter of 4 days they managed to control everything, and all foreign journalists had to leave. All foreign media was banned. The system works in a certain way in Iran, so that the voice of the supreme leader and the real rulers of the country is carried out and executed. They have the institutions for it, and the system is geared up to these emergencies. This is a country which has seen conflict, 8 years of war with Iraq. Within the 80s. Thousands, and if you go to the cemeteries and you can see the number of people have killed. This country can take suffering. It can take, emergencies, situations, tragedies in its stride, and it has done so since 1979. So I don't see that this can in any way rock the system in any way. But my concern is really that domestically everything is fine. But how will it? Because we are working right now in a certain context of a conflict in the region. And if it connects, the two sort of join together somehow, then it can be majorly destabilizing the entire region. And then it's also going to have a spillover effect to countries which are dependent on Iran, their resources, etc. So it'll have a regional countries like India gets impacted big time. In fact, you see the Prime Minister coming out and making a statement. I thought that's extraordinary. I mean, there are a lot of people who were saying that, the relationship between Iran and India is getting lukewarm. But here is a straightforward example how important Iran is to India. I think that's an extraordinary gesture which the Prime Minister showed just now. I mean,
right, absolutely. One of the
amazing.
Yes, world leaders, Indian Prime Minister, expressing country's solidarity with the people out there in Iran. Meanwhile, Atulji, thank you very much for joining us with those inputs. Thank you, as of now, for joining us on this special broadcast. And before we wrap up now, there's some more news coming in. European Commission is activating their satellite mapping service to aid search efforts after Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi's helicopter crashed following a request for assistance from Iran. Now, Crisis Management Commissioner Janez Lenarasic says on X platform that the service was activating its, and I quote, rapid response mapping service in view of the helicopter accident, unquote. That's all we have for you in this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts of the news of the day. And for that, for those of you on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Sakal Bhatt with all of us here in New Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live. Thank you.